morning. I'm Rick Terry with the IMC in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And today we're pleased to be hosting APPI Energy Vice President of Marketing Intelligence and Analytics, Dan Forgacs. And he dives into data-driven comprehensive look at the current state of the energy market, specifically electricity and natural gas, and how to mitigate those rising costs. We'll review the state of the energy markets, take a closer look at where pricing currently stands in Pennsylvania, as well as what to expect in the coming months. Our presenter, Dan, is VP of Market Intelligence and Analytics and is responsible for staying acutely attuned to the energy markets, both past, present, and future, so that APPI energy consultants and their clients are armed with the most in-depth, up-to-date information on market activity. With an extensive background working directly for two national energy suppliers prior to joining APPI Energy, he has more than 18 years of experience in deregulated energy markets. Dan received a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing from Michigan State University, is a certified energy procurement professional, credentialed through the Association of Energy Engineers, and has more than 25 years of sales and marketing experience. So Dan, please take it over from here.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. And good morning, everybody. Really happy to be here to talk to you folks today and tell you a little bit more about what's going on in the energy industry. I will apologize in advance for not really looking at the screen for the most part. I'm going to look at the presentation, and my old eyes need the biggest monitor I can find. So I'll be glancing up here, but really hoping to kind of make this as interactive as possible. Please ask questions at any time. There's the chat function within Teams here, or we'll have a brief Q&A at the end. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and kind of jump into what's going on. Our agenda here is again, just tell you a tiny bit about APPI and our really what we see as kind of a holistic approach to energy management. More importantly, talk about what's happening in the energy markets, both globally, domestically, and then here in Pennsylvania, and what's really affecting manufacturers in terms of those events. Talk a little bit about our energy management solutions, and then again, in ways to, you can kind of control your costs, hopefully lower your usage, lower your demand, look at alternative sources of energy, and then a brief Q&A, questions and answers at the end. But again, feel free to stop me at any time. You can raise your hand, you just put something in the chat. We'll see that, and we'll try to address any questions that you may have. So again, thank you very much for attending. APPI won't spend a whole lot on this, but we've been really proud to partner with the IMC since 2010. And again, really our focus is to provide data-driven, holistic energy management services and solutions. And when we talk about data-driven, it's not just, hey, here's what we think is what's happening, but let's look at the historical trends. Let's look at the drivers that are driving the market. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't claim to, but we find that when you look at history, when you look at what the data is showing, when you rely on many, many sources of information, you can really come up with a well-informed decision and hopefully make good buying decisions. And again, that's really my goal here at APPI, and our company's goal is to help our clients make well-informed energy buying decisions. We've been in business since '96. So almost 26 years of experience. We capture, and I'll show you a little bit of the output of a database that we capture every day, daily pricing that suppliers are putting out into the market. We find that's really the best way to see what the market trends are, is to see what prices suppliers are actually putting out into the market. And again, looking back at that historical and real-time data. And again, with a holistic approach, we really try to take into account all things, not only just hopefully trying to find a good price, but also take into account any efficiency or sustainability goals that you have. Look at different ways to approach risk, different pricing structures, but again, a holistic, all-encompassing view of your energy spend. All right, what's happening in the markets? In a word, they're heading up. Very volatile. We're seeing some of the highest volatility we've seen in over 30 years. Volatility goes both ways, up and down. But what most folks are concerned about these days is rising energy costs. Certainly seeing that at the gas pump, but when you talk about in a manufacturing setting, electricity and natural gas are both, very large spend items for a typical manufacturer. But the big takeaway here is really the volatility, increasing pressure around ESG, environmental, social, and governance goals, whether that's government induced or investor based or supply chain. We're seeing more and more manufacturers being pressured to become more carbon neutral, to reduce their emissions, do more to fight climate change. Again, we're not going to get into a political side of things here, but that's what we're seeing in the industry. Is there's a lot more pressure for companies to be more green or environmentally friendly, if you will. The federal government's doing that as well. See here, the Biden administration has an aggressive goal just in terms of the federal government spend around energy. They're hoping to become 100% carbon free by 2030, and about half of that electricity to be available 24/7. And that really kind of gets to the idea of renewables in particular. As we often say, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. So you need additional ways to address those kinds of targets. We'll talk about a few of those here today. On the right, you see a trend. This is a proprietary trend chart to APPI, in that we do that from the natural gas Henry Hub spot price. Henry Hub's kind of a benchmark for natural gas here in the U.S., located in Louisiana. So we track their spot pricing through the EIA, Energy Information Administration, and then our own proprietary sister organization called the Energy Research Council. Again, as I mentioned, we track daily pricing we work with nearly 50 different suppliers, and we track the daily pricing that they put out. Well, what you'll see here is a very strong correlation between natural gas, again in the orange, and electricity pricing in the blue. What we often say is if gas is up today, power will probably be up tomorrow, and the converse is true as well. You see a really big spike. I think you can be able to see this here. You folks may remember Winter Storm Uri. Didn't really affect us too much here in Pennsylvania, but it was really in mid-continent, in particular Texas, where they had rolling blackouts. Tragically, a couple hundred folks actually perished in that. But what it really did is sent really a shockwave through, I think, the entire energy complex. That some folks, depending on where you stood on the renewables end, said, "Well, boy, we've gone to too much reliance on renewables too fast." Not sure that was totally the case. My own take on it, and I think the government ended up coming up on a report that really Texas didn't do a lot to winterize their energy complex. So you had natural gas folks saying, "Well, I would have given you more gas, but I didn't have power," and the power folks saying, "Well, we would have delivered more power, but we didn't have any gas." Bottom line, the grid really in Texas wasn't winterized appropriately. They've taken some steps to do that. I know I'm talking to some folks, a lot of folks here in central PA, but we're talking about Texas. But it really kind of shows how events elsewhere in the country, or what we'll also see in a minute, is events globally can have an impact at us here at home. So again, Winter Storm Uri there was a brief spike, but very expensive. And I think that did send kind of shock waves through the energy complex. So we'd seen a continuous trend up. Now, a lot of this, was very much COVID related to these lows that we're seeing here in 2020 in particular. But again, a steady stream upwards as the economies open back up, but also as an impact of that winter storm. We've seen prices really begin to rise pretty significantly throughout 21. We did see a dip, and again, power followed suit. But then you start getting into really 2022, and the war in Ukraine has really, again, had a dramatic impact on prices here at home. Because primarily around LNG, liquefied natural gas. And we're sending, basically as a country, we're sending about 20% of the output to overseas. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But as Europe tries to wean itself off of Russian gas, they need it from somewhere else. And the U.S. says basically as much as we can send overseas, they'll take all we can give them and then some. So that has really increased demand Again, some other factors as well, but that's really been a big driver around natural gas. So I kind of stole my own thunder here. We talk about some things that are driving prices up. Also talk about some things that are driving prices lower. Summer temperatures. It is hot. It's been a hot summer. Not only in Pennsylvania, but all over. We've got drought in California. We've got. I had showed our team earlier this week this past Sunday's forecast for the country, and it was just amazing to see how many big cities were expected to be close to 100 or over 100 degrees. Texas is absolutely baking. Many days over 100 degrees. Dallas set a 40-year record. So it's just a extremely hot summer, and the number one biggest driver of natural gas prices in the short term is weather. So again, a lot of volatility there around weather. LNG exports, liquefied natural gas. If you take natural gas, cool it down to about 600 degrees below Fahrenheit, below zero, turns into a liquid, a very stable liquid, no longer flammable and explosive. And I can put that on a tanker and a ship, keep it cold, and send it to an overseas market. To give you some context on that, although natural gas prices are very high here, relatively historically speaking, here in the U.S., let's just say yesterday it was about $8. We'll call it $8 an MMBTU. If I can get that same gas to Europe or even Asia, I might get 30, 40, maybe even $50 for that same MMBTU. So the appeal of taking natural gas rather than selling it here, and if I can again get it over to Europe, I'm going to get a pretty high premium. And a lot of producers are doing exactly that. Again, about 20% of the gas we pull out of the ground, we're sending overseas. It's also been very hot in Europe. Many parts of Europe, many countries have experienced temperatures well over 100 degrees this summer as well. So again, that drives up demand. A lot of power is produced by natural gas here in the U.S. About 40% of our power comes from natural gas fired generation. So you can see on a hotter day, we're going to use more gas, and that in turn is going to make less gas available to refill our storage tanks for next winter. So we really think next winter is going to be pretty expensive. The changing U.S. generation stack, that really just refers to where the power is coming from. How are we generating it? Renewables have been on a strong increase. At the same time, coal has really been on a decrease. Coal is down to only about 20% of the power generated in the U.S. Comes from coal. Natural gas is up to about 40%, as I mentioned, of the power produced here in the U.S. comes from natural gas fired generation. So those things really are driving prices higher. What's driving it lower? There was a fire at a facility called Freeport. It's an LNG, liquefied natural gas export terminal. There was a fire and explosion. That terminal has been offline. They won't even open for partial operation until October, and probably not likely for full operation until the end of the year. That facility alone takes about 2 BCF per day, 2 billion cubic feet per day, that they were sending overseas. That's now staying home. That's staying domestically. And that one event quickly caused natural gas prices to at least temporarily drop as much as 40% right after that happened. So that is, getting an idea of, sometimes these windows of opportunity kind of open and shut very quickly. But despite the market having been climbing this year, we did see some relief after more natural gas was staying home. And then this last one is really kind of in a state of flux. Russia did resume. There's a big pipeline from Russia to Europe called Nord Stream 1. It had been shut down for maintenance. There was a lot of fear in the market that Russia may not reopen it. They then came out and said, well, we'll reopen it as long as sanctions don't affect our ability to get some turbines repaired. That those things are working their way through. Russia said, we will open it back up. They started out flow and then to about 40% of capacity. And then just in the last 48 hours, reduced it down to about 20% of capacity again. So that was a brief driver lower. I think it'll open back up. I think they'll resume flows. They need the revenue. But there's an ongoing issue there. Obviously, again, we won't get too far into that. But the main takeaway there is Europe prior to the Ukraine invasion. Europe imported about 40% of their natural gas from Russia. Germany even more. So they've been very dependent on Russia. What we see here on the right is again from our friends at the EIA, Energy Information Agency Administration. I'm sorry. And what they do is every month they put out what they call their short-term energy outlook. And what they do is they kind of track, okay, here's Henry Hub spot pricing. We saw a similar chart on earlier. But then they say, here's their best forecast. And what they're saying here is, here's where this line here, the blue is the government's forecast of where natural gas pricing will stay for the remainder of this year and into 23. And the green line is what the market says, NYMEX, what the market is currently trading at. So you see a real tight alignment here. I think you can really look at this and say, nobody really thinks natural gas is going to go much below $6 for the remainder of this year. We will see some relief after the winter of 2022-23, after next winter. But even then, probably going to stay, above $4, probably closer to $5 for the average for the year, well into the foreseeable future here. I also see these upper range and a lower. That's basically their confidence range, if you will. So what they're saying here is they are 95% sure that gas will not get over $18 next winter. They're also 95% sure it's not going to be under $2. What we often say is this is kind of your upside risk. This is your downside benefit. So for folks that say, well, I think it's going to come off, they're probably right. It probably will. The government and the markets think that in 23, prices will go lower. But there is that upside risk. And I can tell you all, if you looked at this same chart a year ago, the highest level on this axis was $10. They literally had to get a bigger chart. They had to bump the chart up. And that was what the government was saying. That's what the market was saying, is that we don't really think it's going to get over, again, a year ago, we're 95% sure it's not going to get over $9, was kind of the highest point there. They're now 95% sure it's not going to get over double that. They're 95% sure it's not going to go over $18. Where it actually lands, time will tell. But again, we say, might want to take some steps to insulate yourselves and your business against that upside risk. There is some benefit, but there's purchasing strategies that allow you to protect your organization, but still potentially enjoy some of that benefit if prices do in fact fall or when they fall. All right. Internal or proprietary to APPI, again, our sister organization, the Energy Research Council. We track, as I mentioned, supplier pricing every day. And so this is a 2-year look back for the PECO, Philadelphia area. This is based on not utility pricing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what suppliers, competitive suppliers, are putting out into the market every day. And that's based on, for a term starting next month, what's known as the prompt month. I don't want delivery until next month, but a 1, 2, and 3-year term. So you can see here the premium really is in the near term, very similar to that EIA chart where delivery, and if you just think in terms of when is the power going to be delivered. So a 1-year term is going to be, starting next month, is going to be primarily delivered in the remainder of 22 and the first half of 23. A very large premium there. A 2-year term, it goes a little bit longer, further out. We're expecting, suppliers are expecting, the government's expecting a dip in natural gas prices and consequently power pricing as well, further out. So you can get a lower price by going to a longer term. And you go to a 3-year term, even lower. But again, looking back now, again, keep in mind, this was kind of the depths of COVID, if you will, was kind of our baseline. but a really dramatic over the last 2 years, a really dramatic increase to, in the 12-month term, 140% higher than what we would have seen 2 years ago for delivery in that same term. It's pretty dramatic. That's PECO. We do this for every market that we work in. And that's actually about 15 states in the country have deregulated their electricity market. About 25 have deregulated their natural gas market. So we do this for every market and every utility that we work in. So here's Med-Ed, closer to the central PA there. Similar type of thing. The premium is really for delivery in the short term. One way to lower your cost over the short term is to look at a longer term. You see, still quite a bit higher, but about 60% higher for the 3-year term currently, as opposed to more than double for the 12-month term. All right. So again, we put these out every day for every market we work in. If you want to see that a little bit more specific to your local utility, we can certainly help you with that as well. Okay, so that's really kind of the idea of a competitive supplier, right? So Pennsylvania has a deregulated electricity market. You do not have to buy the energy, and this is true for both electricity and natural gas, from the local utility. Utility rates tend to change for some manufacturers as much as hourly, depending on your size and your rate class. Others qualify for what's known as a price to compare. That's generally the small to medium accounts that you may have. And the utilities put out a price to compare. Those typically adjust every 3 to 6 months. But again, for your larger accounts, they may actually be on an hourly rate. We could certainly help you calculate what those trends have been as well. But again, kind of focusing on Pennsylvania, we see PECO, pretty dramatic increase that went into effect June 1, PPL, Med-Ed. See the various utilities there. Most of them have, we included the percentage of increase, but if you look at, from Penelec to West Penn Power, 40 to 50, 60% increases. We're seeing that across the board. I included a number of other states here. I realize, again, IMC is primarily in central PA, but you may have accounts in other states, in other utilities that are open to competition. So you're looking at increases, and I think this kind of goes to the broad, where folks say, well, I don't know if my utility is necessarily going up. Maybe next winter's not going to be that bad. You start to look at some of these other neighboring states or states around the country. The most dramatic one, something I've never seen in my nearly 20 years in the business. If you look at New Hampshire, a large commercial account next January with the utility is going to be paying close to 50 cents a kilowatt hour. I've never really seen anything like that. And even on the small side, an increase of 112% August 1st, 22.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So pretty dramatic. Now, I will say Pennsylvania is blessed with a lot of different sources of generation. The Northeast is really very dependent on natural gas. New England itself overall is about 1/3 of their generation comes from natural gas. So those folks are actually going to be in, some other states are quite a bit, some of those states are much higher, but they're really going to be competing with Europe for that LNG. A lot of, again, New England, again, imports natural gas, LNG. So again, do I sell it into New England or do I sell it in Europe when I can get 4, 5, 6 times more of it? So we, again, really think next winter is going to be pretty expensive for a lot of folks. Don't mean to be the bearer of bad news there, but again, I think I'm sure you're hearing it from the inflation and many commodities are up pretty dramatically. That kind of goes to a little bit more to keeping it closer to home here. What's affecting manufacturers in Pennsylvania? Certainly rising utility prices. Now, what we were talking about on the previous slide was really just when you use the utility for the generation, for the supply part of it. There's still the distribution side of it as well. Unfortunately, APPI, we really can't help you much to change those rates. Those are still regulated by the state, the local distribution rates. But what we can help you to try to lower your demand, lower your usage, maybe look at alternative sources so you use less power from the utility. But again, some factors that are affecting folks, again, not only rising prices for both supply and distribution, the need for budget certainty. Again, this volatility is something at levels we haven't seen in 30 some years. So how do you protect against that? How do you budget for the future? Lack of bandwidth, labor shortage. I don't need to tell you folks that. Hard to find good workers these days. And a lot of folks are saying to us, boy, I know I need to do something about energy. I just don't have the time. I don't have the manpower. I don't have the expertise to focus on that. So again, a good qualified partner can help you take some of that load off, help you take advantage of those dips in the market, help you look for ways to reduce your usage and demand, and allow you to continue to run your business. And inflation overall, obviously, we don't need to expound on that a whole lot. From a procurement standpoint, again, buying electricity, buying natural gas, some things we make sense just to kind of take a look at what you're currently doing. Let's start there. Let's get a benchmark of what you're currently doing. Looking at your contract, looking at your bill. Are your terms favorable? Do you like that? Are you seeing unexpected charges, unexpected line items? We're seeing, as these markets get incredibly competitive, the margins are squeezed. Suppliers are looking for ways to recoup some of their increased costs. And you may think you're on a fixed price agreement. And what unfortunately we're seeing in the industry is fixed isn't always fixed. Really depends on the contract terms, depends on the supplier's approach to their procurement or their generation. COVID was an excellent, well, sad, but good example of where suppliers were being squeezed, and looked to, in one case, a supplier actually looked to enforce usage change variation language, where customers used quite a bit less energy than their contract volumes, and didn't necessarily tell that supplier. And we're looking at penalties because you didn't use as much power as we bought for you during COVID, during a pandemic, when a lot of folks were closed anyways, not by their own choice. Certainly they couldn't use the power, but what we've seen is suppliers get a lot more strict around enforcing these usage variation language. So you might see some of that. You might see an adjustment for transmission, for your capacity, for your own individual, what are known as your peak load contribution tags. So again, different suppliers handle things differently. You might want to take a look at that. And if you thought you signed at 5 cents a kilowatt hour, are you really paying 5 cents, or are you seeing other line items? Are you hedging against market volatility? Some folks will say, hey, I was talking to Rick earlier before the call started, where for a long time, folks didn't really worry about energy because, quite honestly, the markets were trending lower. Prices continued to come down. No market can do that indefinitely. But when you're seeing the benefit of lower prices, why would I want to lock in for 3 years when the prices just keep coming down? Again, that situation has really changed. So this idea of not necessarily looking at savings, but we're looking at risk mitigation, protecting your organization against volatility. Have you secured the best price, contract length? Again, what we like to do is to try to use the data, use the historical trends to say, well, here's, and then the drivers of here's why we think a 3-year term makes more sense than a 5-year term, or a 4-year term makes more sense than a 2-year term. All depends on your individual circumstances, your individual goals, and quite honestly, your individual load profile is for how you use the energy. Regardless of what you do, whether you buy it from a supplier or buy it from a utility, I think it always makes sense just to look at the bill, and if anything you can do to reduce your demand, reduce your usage. As they say, the cheapest kilowatt hour is the one you don't use. And those are some things that we think are just kind of a good starting point, just reviewing your current situation before you look at what maybe some steps you can take. When we talk about our solutions side of things, or the ways that APPI can help manufacturers reduce their demand, reduce their usage, there's some easy ones and there's some more involved ones. One of the easiest ones is LED lighting. Now, a lot of folks will say, hey, this is nothing new. We've been doing that for years. In fact, we did that 8 years ago and we swapped out all our fluorescents. Well, about every 5 years, we think it makes sense just to look at, have technologies change, have cost change. Are there utility rebates that actually can help you pay for some of those upgrades, even if you're already using LEDs? If it's been more than 5 years, might not be a bad idea just to take another look. It doesn't make sense. Again, we can help you with, what utility rebates are available in your area, and certainly help you, take advantage of all those. Even some programs through our supplier partners where they will actually finance that, and so no upfront capital, and it actually moves it over instead of a capital expense. And you'll see this on a few different of our solutions. It's no longer a capital expenditure, it's actually an operating cost. So sometimes that can be a benefit as well. But again, as we see here, if you're looking at old fluorescent or incandescent lights, an LED retrofit can help you reduce your energy just in the lighting as much as 25%. They don't contain mercury, they last a lot longer, they're cheaper, and certainly help you use less energy. So some ideas around that. Energy efficiency upgrades, that's really kind of goes onto the plant floor there. Maybe it's modernizing old systems. One particular one comes to mind: variable frequency drive motors, where they don't all kick on at the same time. They don't all run at the same time. Automation is, are there things you can do? Maybe just as simple as occupant censored lighting. If there's no one in the warehouse, the lights go off. Somebody walks in, the lights come on. Pretty simple, low-hanging fruit kind of solution, but can really make a big impact and ultimately reduce your carbon footprint as well. Heat recovery, again, can I take the heat that I'm already producing and repurpose that in some way? Maybe the idea of combined heat and power. Maybe you want to generate some of your own power, but then take advantage of that heat and repurpose that. So a lot of different options around that, and economizers can really help us in that regard as well. RECs, those are renewable energy certificate. As I mentioned before, a lot of companies, a lot of manufacturers are under pressure, maybe from their investors, from their owners, from their supply chain, are under pressure to be more green, to move towards a carbon neutral environment. Not everybody can put solar on their roof or has the desire, or the roof space or the parking lot space or land next door to look at solar or wind. Maybe you're a little nervous about a 20-year virtual power purchase agreement to tie in with the local wind farm. Those are all great options, but it's not for everybody. One way to do that is to simply purchase RECs. A renewable energy certificate basically means somewhere on the grid, renewable power was generated and retired and attributed to your organization. It does not mean those electrons flow from the wind farm in Texas to your facility in central Pennsylvania. But again, somewhere on the grid, that renewable energy was generated and attributed to your organization and retired. So nobody can double count that. You then can go to your investors, to your customers, and say, hey, we're 30% green, we're 50% green, we're moving towards 100% green because we purchased RECs to offset the carbon that we're generating here at our plant. Now, I will say that REC pricing, because the demand has has really gone off the charts, pricing has followed suit. Again, a REC is the equivalent of 1 megawatt hour of electricity. And for the past decade, that had traded generally right around $1 a megawatt hour. As you see here, more companies have tried to use RECs to satisfy those energy targets. The price has gone, just last year, from about $1.60 to more than $7. So pretty dramatic increase, but we still see opportunities to do that. And if you're the more expensive ones, or you say, hey, I want it from a wind farm in Western Pennsylvania, that's going to be more expensive than, I don't care where it's produced, but I want something to go on the grid. So there's options to still be green, if you will, but try to lower the cost. And again, that's our what we really try to do with everything we do is to provide you options and help you understand the pros and cons of each. Emission benchmarking and reporting. You probably have heard the SEC has proposed some various rules around various emissions, Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. We can help with our partnership with an organization that has an online data platform that can track all your various your spend around that, the emissions created by that, and really give you an automated ability to track that, set a benchmark, and then as you make steps to lower those emissions, help you track that and quantify that as well. So it's another option. Demand response. This is the idea of reducing during generally of times of high demand on the grid, reducing your usage and being compensated for that by the grid operator. In Pennsylvania, that's known as PJM. That's the regional grid operator for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland, but it also covers some other states like Ohio and the Chicago area as well. But that's the grid operator. They're the ones kind of keeping the grid in balance, and they run these programs to encourage folks, if you can curtail, there's a payment in regard to that. The thought there is it's cheaper to pay you to reduce your usage on a hot day than it is to have to go build a new power plant or to build in new generation. So those programs are not, quite honestly, as lucrative as they used to be. But as we do this transition to more renewables, we see capacity rates increasing, and capacity rates generally are the basis of the demand response payments. So currently, those fluctuate. The latest capacity auction was quite a bit lower than previous. So that reduces the value of these programs. But over time, we think those capacity rates are going to start to climb back up. And again, that will make demand response more lucrative. Again, this isn't for every manufacturer. We work with a lot of plastics folks that say, hey, I can't just shut that line off. I've got liquid plastic working its way through the pipes. I can't waste all that, and understandable. But there are a lot of organizations that can make small incremental steps to reduce their demand during peak times. So you may be getting peak alerts from the utility, from your supplier, from APPI that say, if you can reduce, you might see a benefit, and we can help you understand kind of the benefits of these various programs as well. But again, what we hope to do is, to decrease your cost, makes the grid more reliable. You're using less energy on those hot days, and generating some cash along the way. On-bill funding, I touched on that earlier. A number of our suppliers will actually finance these programs for you. It moves it from the capital expenditure side of your budget to an operating cost, and at the same time, maybe it's an efficiency measure that helps you reduce your cost, modernizes your facility, again, hit some sustainability goals, all without having a substantial cash outlay. You can pay that over time on your utility bill. So that can be another option to finance some of these programs as well. Again, just about ready to wrap up here. Why APPI? We hope our holistic approach, not just focusing on procurement, but also helping you reduce your electricity usage, your natural gas usage, your demand levels, taking a holistic approach, your risk tolerances, your sustainability goals. We hope to take that all into account when we come back to you and say, here's our recommended strategy. Ultimately, it's your decision, but we hope to, again, help you make a well-informed decision. Our team's been doing this for quite a while. We've been online for about in service for about 26 years, as I mentioned. So we've seen a lot of these market trends come and go, and again, hope to be able to help you folks. Again, partner with your organization, comprehensive solutions and services to reduce your demand and consumption, and ultimately be an extension of your team. And go ahead and try to make your lives easier. You can go back to running your manufacturing facility, knowing that you're doing what you can to reduce your costs, be more sustainable and resilient. And I believe that is about all we have in terms of presentation. Got my contact information there. Your dedicated person consultant for the IMC is another Dan F. Dan Flaherty here at APPI. He's one of our senior consultants. Been with us for about 14 years as well. So again, we more than happy to reach out to either one of us. Reach out through Rick, through the IMC, give me a call, shoot me an email, shoot Dan an email. I'm glad to help you in any way I can. Do have a question here on the chat. Does on-site generation through some type of renewable make sense as an option for manufacturers to invest in? Absolutely. So again, the question was about, on-site generation for renewables. We absolutely are seeing a lot of folks doing that as a way to become more resilient, as a way to, again, achieve their sustainability goals, and ultimately to reduce costs. Now, there is a cost to it. As I mentioned before, not everybody has the roof space or the capital or the land or the parking lot to look at solar. But there's a lot of different options. Now this question was in regards to on-site generation, but there's also this idea of off-site generation. And maybe that's working through what I mentioned before is one of these a virtual power purchase agreement or a straight up power purchase agreement from a renewable facility. So that is an option. We work with a number of suppliers who have various wind farms, solar farms, and space opens up for an off-taker, as they call it. So that might be a way for an organization to be able to I mentioned before, Rex, you don't really get the benefit of saying, oh, my power came from right there. That came from that solar field right there. Through some of the products some of our suppliers offer, supplier partners, you literally could point to, no, we helped facilitate that. We didn't have to lay out the big capital expense. We didn't have to do all the risk management, but we helped because we take the power from that facility right there. We helped that solar field get built. So on-site generation certainly is an option. Off-site is also a lot of different ways to be more sustainable, reduce reduce your carbon footprint. Does APPI assist in finding incentives or grants to update or invest in energy saving projects? Absolutely. So again, a lot of utility programs out there, utility rebates and incentives. We like to handle all of that for you. You get 100% of that, but we handle all the paperwork and the compliance. Usually that starts with a benchmarking assessment. What are you currently doing? And then as you put these programs in place, what have you done? Something to keep in mind for utility incentives, we're all paying for that every month. You may see a small line item on your bill, but the reality is you put all those line items, all those little small charges together, that is what funds these utility incentive programs. So if you're helping pay for it, we say, why don't you take advantage of it, get some of that money back. What we often find is throughout the year, they're flush with cash. And then as folks, use it up, the dollars dry up and then they kind of refund it. So timing is critical. These incentives change all the time. But again, to the question, we can absolutely help you in finding those incentives and grants to help you offset the cost of doing your energy saving project. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Anybody have anything else? If not, I will turn it back. Oh, okay, we did go a late one here. I keep hearing about RGGI. What is it, and will it raise prices in Pennsylvania? Okay, RGGI stands for the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. You may be hearing about that. Pennsylvania, the governor did sign legislation to put Pennsylvania into this. I'd really call it a cap and trade type of a program. There's 11 states in the Northeast and down into the Mid-Atlantic that are part of this cooperative, if you will. But it's basically a cap and trade program around emission credits, so greenhouse gases. in carbon emissions. Basically, they do quarterly auctions to establish the value of those credits. A power plant or any producer can buy those credits to offset the carbon they're putting into the ground, or I'm putting into the air. It's a little where I'm hesitating a little on this because it's really tied up in the courts. The governor did put it into action for Pennsylvania to join this regional greenhouse gas initiative. It was challenged by the Coal Alliance and even some legislators as well. That had the effect of a court put an injunction on it being enforced. However, it was that because of the type of challenge in Pennsylvania, when there's a challenge, a certain type of challenge, it then has the effect of lifting that injunction. And I believe just yesterday or perhaps Tuesday, the court again reinforced the injunction. So to the question, will it raise prices in Pennsylvania? My guess is it will. As you put more regulations, Pennsylvania is actually the largest exporter outside of Texas of electricity to other states. And a lot of folks are saying, wait a minute, we're generating it here at home. I don't really want my power plant to have to pay more to do that. And then what they do is they take the proceeds of those auctions and distribute it among all 11 states. And that those are meant to go towards energy efficiency programs and other green energy type programs. So the short answer is, if it does go into effect, I do think it'll increase the prices here in Pennsylvania. Where this all plays out in the courts, you folks probably know better than I do. It's been very controversial here in Pennsylvania. A lot of folks are opposed to it. Certainly, folks on the generation side are opposed to anything. The heart of the matter, the court case, is it really a tax? Is it ultimately a tax? And only the legislature in Pennsylvania can impose a tax. So if it's found to effectively be a tax, maybe it's the Department of Environmental Protection is overstepping their bounds by joining this. So remains to be seen there. Again, been controversial for a while. Currently is not going into effect, currently under an injunction. I think over the next few months, we'll see that play out. And we're certainly happy to keep you folks informed as we see things play out. See one more person typing here. We'll see if that's a question. Judge for the delay here. I see something coming in. I can't quite read it yet. Oh, okay. What is the first step if we want to see what we can save? Great, excellent question. So our process is really, again, we hope to minimize the amount of work and do the heavy lifting for you. Just from an electricity and natural gas standpoint, very easy process. All we really need is one month of a utility invoice for each of your accounts. We also need something called a utility usage request form. All it simply does is allows your local utility to release 12 months of your usage data. We can then go out to market. We run about 400 RFPs, requests for pricing, every month. So we'll run an RFP. We'll have multiple suppliers compete for your business on a level playing field. And that means not only are the terms and conditions the same, but also are they competing on the same market conditions? The market, as we mentioned, very volatile, fluctuating all the time. So it's not really fair for someone to quote on a Monday and another supplier to quote on a Wednesday when the market has dipped. So we force them to compete on that level playing field. Again, all we need from you folks, a copy of a bill, your authorization for the utility to release your usage history. There's no upfront costs for IMC members. There's no obligation until we can prove to you that it makes sense to take one of our recommendations. If you've got the best game in town, we'll tell you that. If we can help you save some money or avoid some risk, we'll tell you that too. Again, we don't make any buying decisions for you. It's ultimately your decision, but we'd be more than happy, and either Dan Flaherty, who would be your main point of contact, or myself, happy to help you in any way we can. And again, if there's no other questions, really appreciate everybody taking the time this morning. Hopefully it was useful information to you to know what's going on in the markets. And again, we're really proud of our relationship, our partnership with IMC, and happy to help you folks in any way that we can. If there's nothing else, Rick, I'll turn it back over to you to wrap us up.
Thanks, Dan. I thought it was a great presentation, and definitely a lot of information there for people to think about with the energy prices going up the way they have, and the instability in the market. I don't know if all of them, if we ever really think about the demand impact on our energy prices in the industrial and manufacturing sector as often as we probably should, and look at ways to reduce that. So good information. I hope some, I hope people found it helpful and something that maybe they want to look at pursuing, at least getting more information on. So if the IMC or APPI can help you in any way, just reach out to us, and we'd be glad to see what we can do for you. So I don't think there's any other questions on the chat that I see either. And if that's it, then thank you very much, Dan, for today's presentation, and look forward to continuing to work with you and present information to our clients and accounts as well.
That's great. Thank you, Rick. Have a great day, everybody.
You too.
Bye-bye.